Are you going to let Mom die just to save your precious credit score? My sister, Marion, hissed those words at me across the bank desk, shoving a brochure for a heart surgeon into my face. She was sobbing, shaking, telling me she had maxed out every credit card she owned. My husband, Silas, just stood next to her with his arms crossed, refusing to look me in the eye. I broke. I picked up the pen and signed my name next to the number. $120,000. As the ink dried, Marion dabbed her eyes with a tissue, and for a split second, I saw it. A tiny, cold smirk. I thought I was saving my mother. I didn't know I had just signed the contract for a war. My name is Clara. I am 30 years old, and for most of my adult life, my job title wasn't loan officer or wife or sister. It was the fixer. I was the one you called when the credit card was declined at dinner. I was the one who drove a 10-year-old sedan with a permanent dent in the bumper, because I couldn't justify the $500 to fix it. While my husband, Silas, leased a brand new sports car we definitely couldn't afford, because he needed to project success for a business that didn't exist. I ate leftovers out of Tupperware for lunch so I could cover Marion's minimum payments. I wore thrift store blazers to work so Marion could buy designer morning clothes. I accepted this role because I thought it was the price of admission for having a family. I thought that by signing that loan for $120,000, I was buying my mother a chance at life. But life doesn't work that way. Especially not in my family. 2 weeks after I signed those papers, my mother died. The surgery never happened. The specialist Marion had screamed about never even saw her. The doctors said her heart just gave out, exhausted by stress and age. The funeral was a theater production, and Marion was the star. She stood at the front of the chapel in a black silk dress that I knew cost $800 because I had paid off her visa bill the month before. She was beautiful in her grief, draped over the casket, wailing just loud enough to be heard in the back row but soft enough to be tragic. Everyone who walked by whispered about what a devoted daughter she was, how she had managed everything until the very end. And me? I wasn't at the front. I was in the hallway of the funeral home, writing a check to the caterer because Silas had forgotten his wallet. Again, I walked back into the reception hall, my hand cramping from signing checks all morning. I spotted Silas near the bar. He wasn't greeting guests. He wasn't comforting me. He was holding a glass of red wine up to the light, swirling it with a look of pure disdain. "Clara," he said as I approached, not lowering his voice. "Did you pick this wine? It tastes like vinegar. I told you we should have gone with the reserve bottles." "It is embarrassing. It is a funeral, Silas," I whispered, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "Nobody is here for the wine. Marion thinks it is cheap." He shrugged, taking another sip anyway. "She says Mom deserved better." I looked across the room. Marion was holding court with our relatives, dabbing her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked over at me, not with sympathy, but with an expectant raise of her eyebrows. She pointed subtly to the empty tray of hors d'oeuvres. She wanted me to go get more. She didn't see a sister who had just lost her mother. She didn't see the woman who had just signed away her financial future to save a life that was already gone. She saw a staff member. She saw a wallet. I turned away and walked toward the kitchen to refill the tray. I told myself I was doing it because I was the strong one. I was the capable one. I told myself that the $120,000 sitting in that joint account would be returned to the bank now that Mom was gone. I thought the debt would be canceled, and we could just grieve. I didn't know then that the money was already gone. I didn't know that while I was serving crab cakes and apologizing for the wine, Marion and Silas were already planning how to spend the inheritance I didn't even know I had given them. I was the invisible ATM, and I had just authorized the final withdrawal. It took exactly 32 days for the illusion to shatter. I was sitting at my desk at the bank, reviewing a client's mortgage application, when my own phone rang. It was the collections department from the lender, holding the $120,000 loan. "Miss Clara," the representative said, her voice professional and detached. "We are calling to inform you that the first auto draft payment has been returned for insufficient funds." My stomach dropped. That account was supposed to have the full principal amount sitting in it. The surgery hadn't happened. The money shouldn't have moved. I hung up and logged into the joint account app. I typed the password with cold, stiff fingers. I expected to see a bank error. Maybe a hold on the funds. Instead, I saw a zero balance. And right below it, a single transaction dated 2 days after Mom's funeral. Outgoing wire transfer. Riverside penthouse escrow. The air left my lungs. They didn't pay the hospital. They didn't pay the funeral home. They bought a house. I didn't call them. I drove. I drove straight to the Riverside complex, the most expensive new development in the city. I bluffed my way past the doorman and took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened directly into the foyer. The smell hit me first, fresh paint and expensive lilies. Marion was there, standing in the middle of a sun-drenched living room that was bigger than my entire apartment. She was holding a glass of champagne, directing movers where to place a white velvet sofa. Silas was on the balcony, leaning over the railing, looking like he owned the city. "Clara!" Marian beamed when she saw me, as if I were arriving for a tea party. "You found us! Isn't it gorgeous? The light in here is healing. It is exactly what I needed after everything." I held up my phone, the bank transaction glowing on the screen. "You bought a penthouse. With the money for Mom's heart surgery." Marian's smile didn't falter. It just tightened at the corners. "Don't be dramatic, Clara. Mom is gone. Do you think she would want that money sitting in a bank account while her favorite daughter suffers in a cramped apartment? She wanted us to be happy. This is an investment. For the family. I signed that loan," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I had never let myself feel before. "I am the guarantor. That is my debt." Silas walked in from the balcony, sliding his arm around Marian's waist. He looked at me with a smirk that chilled my blood. "Read the paperwork, Clara. You signed as the guarantor. We are the primary borrowers, sure. But since we have no income, the liability falls to you. It is your debt now. We are just living in the asset." He laughed. A short, dismissive sound. And in that moment, staring at them, something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a lock turning. I looked at Marian, my sister, the golden child, and I finally understood the mechanism of the trap. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't just greed. It was a lifetime of conditioning. This is the trap of normalized cruelty. They had spent 30 years training me for this moment. Every time I paid a bill and they didn't say thank you, they were training me. Every time I apologized for their mistakes, I was training myself. They had weaponized the concept of family to bypass my logic. They knew that if they wrapped their greed in the language of love and emergency, "Mom is dying, we need to be happy," I would swallow the poison and thank them for the meal. They didn't just steal my money. They leveraged my own empathy against me. They gaslit me into believing that my boundaries were selfishness, and their exploitation was love. I looked at the white velvet sofa. I looked at the champagne. I looked at the sister who had used our mother's dying breath to upgrade her lifestyle. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a vase. I realized that screaming at people who have no conscience is like trying to describe color to the blind. It doesn't work. And it only exhausts you. "Okay," I said. The word hung in the air, heavy and final. Marian blinked, surprised by my sudden calm. "Okay?" she repeated. "Enjoy the view," I said. I turned around and walked back to the elevator. I rode it down to the lobby and walked out into the gray afternoon rain. I stood on the sidewalk, letting the water soak into my cheap blazer. I had $120,000 of debt, a ruined credit score, and no family left. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was walking away to cry. They didn't know that the Clara who walked into that elevator died on the ride down. The woman standing in the rain wasn't a sister anymore. She was a creditor, and she was going to collect every single cent. I disappeared. That was my first move. I blocked them on social media, changed my number, and traded my 2-bedroom rental for a 300-square-foot studio apartment above a noisy laundromat. It smelled like fabric softener and exhaust, but it cost half of what I was paying before. Every dollar I saved wasn't just savings. It was ammunition. To the outside world, I looked like a woman who had given up. I looked like the loser sister who had been crushed by debt and retreated into the shadows. But in the dark, I was sharpening my knives. I took a second job. I didn't go back to retail or food service. I got hired at a debt collection agency. I spent 8 hours a day at the bank and another 4 hours a night learning the brutal, unglamorous mechanics of asset recovery. I learned how to track hidden funds. I learned about garnishments. And most importantly, I learned about the legal power of a judgment lien. While Marian was posting photos of her penthouse views and hashtagging blessed life, I was building a case file on my kitchen table. The fraud was sloppy. Arrogant criminals usually are. I had the original hospital records proving Mom's life-saving surgery was actually a routine checkup covered by Medicare. I had the bank records showing the direct transfer from the joint account to the real estate escrow. It was embezzlement. Clear as day. But I didn't want to send them to jail. Jail wouldn't pay back my $120,000. I wanted my money. I filed a civil lawsuit against Marian for fraud and misappropriation of funds. But here is where I got smart. Here is where knowing your enemy is better than having a high-priced lawyer. Marian is paranoid. She has always been terrified of being seen as poor or struggling. To dodge the bills for her leased Mercedes and her maxed-out credit cards, she never updated her driver's license address. She kept her official address listed at Mom's old house, a house that was sitting empty, waiting for probate to clear. She did this so process servers and bill collectors would knock on the wrong door. I used her own evasion against her. I legally served the lawsuit papers to her official address of record mom's empty house. I knew she wouldn't check the mail. I knew she would assume any envelope sent there was just another overdue notice for a bill she ignored. On the day of the hearing, I stood in the courtroom wearing my best suit. The judge called the case. I was there. Marian was not. She was probably getting a massage or brunching with Silas, completely unaware that a gavel was banging down on her future. Because she failed to appear, the judge granted me a default judgment. I won. I was awarded the full principal of $120,000, plus interest, plus legal fees. I walked out of that courthouse with a piece of paper worth nearly $150,000. But I didn't call her. I didn't send a gloating text. I didn't send the sheriff to seize her car. That would have been satisfying for a moment. But it wasn't the kill shot. I took that judgment straight to the county clerk's office. I paid the filing fee and registered a lien against the title of the Riverside penthouse. It was a silent trap. A landmine buried deep in the paperwork of her most prized possession. Now, she couldn't refinance. She couldn't take out another loan. And most importantly, she couldn't sell that apartment without paying me first. I went back to my tiny studio, ate a cup of instant noodles, and waited. I watched her Instagram stories, the parties, the new furniture, the champagne toasts. I watched them living the high life on my credit. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel jealous or angry. I just felt patient. They were fattening themselves up. And I was the butcher waiting for the bill to come due. 6 months later, the trap was ready to spring. I had been monitoring Marian's credit report like a hawk. It was a disaster. Maxed out cards, missed payments, collection notices. Silas had crashed the sports car, and insurance wouldn't cover it because he had let the policy lapse. They were drowning. The lifestyle they had stolen was expensive to maintain, and the well had run dry. I saw the signs before they even listed the property. Marian started posting about needing a change of scenery, and how the city energy was toxic. Silas posted about crypto investments in Bali. They were desperate for cash, and the only asset they had left was the penthouse. But I knew something they didn't. Because they had never hired a real estate agent too cheap to pay the commission they were trying to sell it for sale by owner. That meant no professional was looking at the title report. No one was warning them about the lien. I made my move. I couldn't approach them directly. If they knew it was me, they would run. So, I used a proxy. I asked a junior colleague from the collection agency, a sharp 22-year-old named David who looked like he belonged in a startup boardroom, to play the role. He contacted Marian, posing as the representative for an anonymous overseas investor, my LLC. "We are looking for luxury properties for a quick cash acquisition," David told her over the phone. I listened in on speaker, holding my breath. "My client is willing to offer $350,000. I heard Marian gasp. That was $50,000 over market value. It was the bait, and she swallowed it whole. "That sounds acceptable," she said, trying to sound bored but failing to hide the tremor in her voice. "But we would need to close quickly. We have international travel plans. We can close in 10 days, David assured her. "But there is one non-negotiable condition. My client requires immediate possession. The property must be completely vacant at the time of signing, keys handed over, all personal belongings removed. If there is a single toothbrush left in that apartment, the deal is off." "Done," Marian said instantly. "We can be out by Friday." It was almost too easy. Greed blinds people. It makes them sloppy. Marian didn't ask why the investor was anonymous. She didn't ask for a deposit. She just saw the number $350,000 and started spending it in her head. For the next week, I watched from a distance as my trap tightened. I saw the moving trucks outside the building. I saw Silas selling their designer furniture on Facebook Marketplace for pennies on the dollar because they needed to clear the space fast. They were liquidating their entire life. They were burning their bridges, convinced they were about to walk across a golden one. I checked the group chat, the one they hadn't bothered to remove me from because they assumed I was irrelevant. Marian was gloating. "Sold it for a huge profit. We're moving to Bali first class. Finally leaving this miserable city, and all the dead weight behind. Winning." I stared at the text. Dead weight. That was me. I didn't reply. I forwarded the screenshot to the title officer handling the closing. On signing day, I wore my best suit. In the mirror, I didn't see a tired, debt-ridden sister anymore. I saw a woman who owned her future. I parked across from the title office and watched Marian and Silas arrive in an Uber. They'd already sold the car. Resort outfits, vacation swagger. They had no idea they were walking into a cage. I gave them 10 minutes. 10 minutes to get comfortable. 10 minutes to sign away the deed. 10 minutes to believe they'd won. Then I walked in. Briefcase in hand, judgment inside. Lien release in my pocket. The waiting room had that expensive, hushed silence where fortunes change hands. Through the frosted glass, Marian was performing confidence for the title officer, Mr. Henderson, while Silas lounged beside her. "It's about vision," she said. "Clara warned me not to buy. Poor thing, worker bee mindset. She's probably in a cubicle eating ramen while we retire at 32. Silas smirked. "Wire it to the offshore account. Our flight's at 4. Mr. Henderson slid the closing documents over. "Sign here, here, and here. This transfers the deed immediately." Marian signed like a celebrity. Silas signed like a thief who thought he'd gotten away with it. "Done," Marian said. "Hand out." "So, wire confirmation?" Mr. Henderson didn't shake. He slid over the settlement statement. "Final disbursement breakdown." Marian scanned for the big number, then froze. "What is this?" she whispered. "It says 0. Silas snatched it. "Impossible. The sale was $350,000. "It was," Mr. Henderson said evenly. "But the title search revealed a recorded judgment lien $145,000, including interest and fees. Then your existing mortgage $200,000, plus closing costs." He tapped the bottom line. "After satisfying secured debts, your proceeds are 0. You actually owe filing fees. But the buyer agreed to cover them. To complete the closing." Marian shot up. "Who put a lien on my house? That's fraud. I'll sue." "It's not fraud, Marian," I said. I opened the door and stepped in. The room went airless. They turned, expecting the sister they used to bully, and found someone else. Tailored charcoal suit, leather briefcase, calm eyes. "Clara?" Marian breathed. "What are you doing here?" "I'm the creditor," I said, walking to the table. "And the buyer." Silas laughed, panicked. "You don't have money. You're broke." "I was broke because I was funding your lifestyle," I said. "But I saved. And I sued." "You missed court, Marian. You were too busy shopping. The judge gave me everything." I laid the default judgment beside their zero balance statement. "I bought the debt," I said softly. "Then I formed the LLC that just bought this place. I didn't steal your home. You sold it to me, signed the deed, moved out, and used the profit to pay back what you stole from Mom's medical fund." That's when the illusion of power evaporated. For years, they wore confidence like designer clothing built an identity on having, not being. Now, without stolen money to prop them up, they weren't just broke. They were hollow. Marian's face drained. She looked at the signed deed, the suitcases, the trap, and realized she'd built it, stepped into it, and locked the door herself. "We sold everything," she gasped. "We have tickets to Bali tonight." "Cancel them," I said. "You can't afford the ride to the airport." Silas lunged for the paperwork. "Rip it up." A security guard stepped in and clamped a hand on his shoulder. Silas shrank instantly. "It's recorded," Mr. Henderson said, closing the file. "The property belongs to the LLC." Marian's voice cracked. "Clara, please. We have nowhere to go. You can't do this." "I didn't," I said. "You did. I just balanced the books." She grabbed my sleeve, mascara running. "We're sisters. Think about Mom. She'd want forgiveness." I covered her hand with the judgment copy. "Mom isn't here. And you used her name to steal from me. That wasn't an accident. It was a choice." I stepped back. "You told me to learn how to carry the family." "I did. I carried your debt away. We're even. This isn't revenge, it's accounting." I nodded to security. "Escort them out. They have no legal right to be here." They were marched out, still yelling, still blaming, still refusing to accept consequences. When the elevator doors closed, it felt like a lock clicking shut. I turned to Mr. Henderson. "I'll take the keys now." That afternoon, I walked through the empty penthouse echoes of their greed still in the rooms. On the balcony, I finally took a breath without anxiety. Debt cleared. Lien satisfied. Asset secured. I didn't keep it. I sold it the next week, took the clean profit, and put it into a Trust My Freedom fund. Later, I heard Marian and Silas ended up in a motel, tearing each other apart without money to glue them together. But I don't track them anymore. I don't check their credit. I don't answer unknown calls. Silence is expensive. It cost me years and $120,000. But the peace I have now? Worth every penny. Have you ever trusted family only to learn you were their retirement plan? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone.